Atheist Nomads episode 352. So many fucking crazy right-wing protests.
The podcast you're about to listen to includes cursing and talking about hoo-haws. Please be advised.
Welcome to another episode of Atheist Nomads. I am Dustin, and joining me is Lauren.
Hello!
And of course, I can't actually use that title as the real title, but I'll get something kind of like it.
Of course.
But, oh man.
But yeah, there's a lot of, what's the level beyond Tea Party? Like, what's the next big boss?
So, okay.
In Idaho, that's the Idaho Freedom Foundation.
I'm not sure who really the big boss is. I don't know if it's Betsy DeVos's family.
Yeah. They're definitely part of it.
Her brother, Erik Prince, is the head of Blackwater.
Yeah.
So, far right-wing conservative family that wants to gut public education and who own their own army.
Yeah. There's a shock.
Uh-huh. Yeah. This is a family who wants to privatize everything.
Right, because they've already shown how they can privatize the military.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know how well known it is, but all of those numbers on how many troops are in Iraq were all about half what the real numbers were because of Blackwater and other, quote,
mercenaries.
Contractors.
They're mercenaries.
Yeah. And so anyway, the DeVos and the Prince family they're actively involved in all of this. They're funding some of the groups. In particular, the group that's behind the Michigan, New York, and Virginia rallies that Donald Trump tweeted about.
Right, because he had his own hand, I'm sure, in making those.
Uh-huh.
I mean, he's actively said that.
Oh, yeah. He's actively saying that he has all of the power, not the governors, but the governors have to be doing everything. And we should be doing all this sheltering and placing and not, shutting down all these businesses, but liberate these states because Second Amendment.
Right. Which is a convoluted argument at best.
It's not even a convoluted argument. It's not even an argument. Trump can't say that he has absolute control over this because he doesn't.
Especially when he also follows that with I'm completely not responsible for any of this.
Right. He's trying to have his cake and eat it too, which only works with far right-wing groups that are being funded by a family that gets their money from government contracts.
War profiteering.
Yep.
Yep. And, today, the day of recording, we had a big protest down at the neighborhood park, Kleiner Park in Meridian. It was a bunch of women and their kids. They're all playing on the playground equipment, cram-packed in there, because it was public property and they had a right to have access to it. It was also funded by Idaho Freedom Foundation.
And that's a logical follow-up to the protest that happened on
Saturday.
The protest happened on Saturday with more than 1,000 people in attendance at the Idaho State Capitol.
Yep.
The Idaho Freedom Foundation was the main group behind it, but there were libertarians, gun rights groups, anti-vax groups, all there waving their flags.
Yeah, it was not a pretty scene. There was a lot of hostility. There were people being abused, beaten. Well, I wouldn't say beaten, but there was a couple of people who got pushed around. And the cops protected them the whole time.
The people are getting pushed around, or the people doing the pushing?
The people doing the pushing. No, the people who are there protesting. The cops are there to make sure that nobody got really hurt, but that didn't stop these people from hurting people who were protesting their protest.
Yeah. And a lot of these people were carrying guns.
Yeah, it was open carry season out there. It was... Because that's what it's really about.
Which, if you're having I know there are people who would argue this, but in my opinion, a protest with guns is not a peaceful protest.
No, because the gun automatically is a sign of intimidation.
Yep.
Not rights.
If it's
I mean, that's how I feel.
If you have a rally with a bunch of people with guns, that's scary.
Yeah, it is
scary. If you have a march with people with guns, that looks to me a lot like a military formation, a rebel group, a militia. That's not a peaceful protest. In this case, they weren't marching.
Basically, a peaceful protest is, does the other side feel that they can also protest? So do you have equal protest, anti-protest groups going on? In a protest like this one, where there was a lot of open carry, there was a lot of angry, yelling people, there was no chance for an anti-protest to develop because those people would have been in actual danger.
Right. And the whole point of this protest was to loudly and very aggressively threaten the government.
Yeah. And got away scot-free.
Technically, everyone in that protest committed a misdemeanor by being there.
Yeah, but committing and getting charged with and actually being punished for are very different.
And also, there's no way that the state of Idaho could arrest more than 1,000 people.
Oh, please. You're telling me that there's no way to tell.
If even 5% of them have guns.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really frustrating. Heather Scott from Northern Idaho was, of course, all behind it. It blows my mind that she's running, that nobody's running against her. So she's guaranteed in for the next.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Northern Idaho, what the hell? Of course, we're not doing that much better down here. Everybody's so upset that they can't get their hair salon appointments that they go protest, which of course sets us back. Mm-hmm. So.
As if Easter wasn't bad enough. Now we've got these mass protests where people are hugging and standing close.
High-fiving and purposely standing close, coughing on people who are even like walking by. I mean, they were just being dicks. Dick and Janes. They were just being rude and awful, and I hate them all. And I wish that each one had to wear a t-shirt or something that says, I went to this protest so that I could stay like 20 feet away from those people at all times.
27's the number you want to go for.
27 feet. All right.
Yeah.
Because to be honest, I don't know if, there are people in my neighborhood who may very well have gone there that I actually interact with. That would suck.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Now, of course, Idaho wasn't the only state to have had large protests.
Right. No, this is a coordinated effort.
Very, very coordinated. Colorado, Illinois, Florida, Tennessee, Washington, Virginia, Texas, Oregon, Michigan, and I know we're missing some.
I also have a really hard time commenting on these protests because I don't have anything to protest. If anything, this has been a financial boon for us.
Yeah.
And we're in a very small minority. It's hard to say, hey, you guys shouldn't be doing this. You're endangering everybody, when we are not waiting for our, 6th, 7th week of unemployment checks to get approved.
Right. Yeah. This has not being able to go out has cut down on our spending. Well, normal spending. Getting a $2,900 stimulus check has enabled a lot of not normal spending.
Yeah.
It's pure coincidence that I happened to get a pay band adjustment that went into effect during all of this. But yeah.
Right. That wasn't unrelated, but when we're not spending any money going out, driving.
Yeah. An extra $300 a month right now feels like a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And this, like, I work for a hospital, and not everybody working for the hospital is in the same situation. There have been quite a few who have been furloughed. I routinely eat lunch with somebody who has been furloughed.
Yeah.
Granted, she got furloughed. She volunteered for it.
If you volunteered, did you get furloughed with pay?
No.
Oh.
No. The whole point of furlough is getting you off the payroll.
Oh. Well, because there's been a lot of people saying that they've been furloughed with pay. So I'm assuming that's
not
thing.
A furlough. Definitionally, that's not a furlough.
Okay, well.
That's just not working with pay.
Okay, whatever.
But she voluntarily took the furlough because she didn't want to be around any of it because she was 8 months pregnant.
Oh, yeah. I would get the hell out of Dodge, too.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so that it's hitting a lot of people very differently than others. I've seen some reports of people having their employers cutting their paychecks, saying that, yeah, the stimulus check takes care of the rest of it.
No, that's not what the stimulus check is for.
No.
That was purely just to get people to go out and spend money at businesses.
Mm-hmm.
To keep the economy going.
The stimulus check exists for two things. One is to help people who are waiting for the 7th week to get an unemployment check, to help them buy groceries, and to help the people who aren't in that situation, enable them to spend money so that whatever businesses are open stay open.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with your wages.
Nope.
And anybody who does that are dicks. Also, anybody who calls a conference call and fires all of their part-time employees with no heads up, except for over this conference call, that also is a dick move. Sephora just did.
Oh, yeah.
All these businesses, big businesses, are getting small business handouts because they are breaking their big businesses down into smaller groups so that they qualify for... Oh, God, you guys, that's not for you.
Well, okay.
I think what was the big one? Shake Shack or something? They're everywhere, apparently. Yeah, they broke themselves all up into like 100 different groups, and all of them got money. They returned it. Yeah. They had to return it after somebody printed an expose on it. But it's like, dude, you did that on purpose. You're dicks.
Well, okay, from a that's not an uncommon practice. Like my employer,
it's not uncommon. That's not the point.
They're taking it further.
Yeah, the point is that during a pandemic, that's not what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. And it also, when you're looking at the size of a company, you should be looking at the size of the company, not the particular subsidiary. Like, I technically work for a subsidiary that probably has less than 1,000 employees of a corporation that a corporation that employs several 100,000. It should be counted as the large national organization, not the particular subsidiary, which in my case is a regional organization, not even a particular hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you get into like restaurants, it gets even weirder with franchises where it's really complicated. Some are actually owned and operated by the company whose name's on the door, and most of them aren't. Yeah,
most of them are not. Yeah. Ruth Chris's Steakhouse is another one that apparently has been doing. Yeah, this is definitely showing some companies' true colors here.
Yeah.
And if you want to support small businesses and all that jazz, make sure you're actually supporting a locally owned small business, not something that opened up and you haven't seen another one in 300 miles. No, they're still chains. They're still big businesses. It's the little hole in the wall places that go the extra mile to take care of their employees and people who need it.
Yeah.
Shout out to Madabon's Indian cuisine. Oh my God. That stuff was good.
Yes, it was.
That is one thing that I've heard about people in our situation who have a little bit of the money. Once a week, you dedicate your dinner or lunch or something to a local business. Spread it around that way. That's nice. That's a nice idea.
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't gotten that far, but
that's what Madabon's was.
We're doing a little bit more than normal of that, and it's nice. Yeah,
better than Domino's.
Yeah. This started in March with Politico reporting that the Department of Homeland Security was saying that ISIS was advising its members to not travel to Europe because of the pandemic, and advised its members on how to practice physical distancing and how to avoid becoming infected, like frequent hand washing. That's ISIS.
Yeah.
Islamic terrorist organization taking this seriously and trying to keep their people from dying.
From a disease.
From a disease, yes. Specifically a disease. Because if they die of the disease, they can't die in their wars or terrorist attacks.
Yeah.
But You contrast that to the Christian right and white nationalists in the US, and they're doing the exact opposite. They're denying the virus exists, or denying that it's a threat, or saying they don't care and they want their goddamn rights.
Yep.
Right now, that's what will kill us all.
Yeah. I don't know how to explain it. This is people who are already paranoid and already sure that that the government, apparently all the governments, because if this is a conspiracy, that's a huge conspiracy. That's every medical worker in the entire world would have to be lying about this.
Right. And if there are actual conspiracies, it's to underreport it.
Yeah, the opposite of what they're worried about.
We you got a little irritated with me arguing with this neighbor about it, but I argued with a neighbor for about 2 weeks ago after she was spouting off stuff that I saw in the news as being what Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, and Sean Hannity had been talking about, saying that the CDC numbers were overinflated. Or no, the media's numbers were overinflated.
The quote-unquote media.
And that you should be getting your numbers from the CDC, which says it's nowhere near as bad. I stopped looking at the CDC website when it was declared a pandemic because that's when they said they stopped tracking numbers.
Yeah, the CDC has on their website, right? Saying do not look at us for numbers, basically. We're not tracking them. But it's so funny because you had pretty up-to-date numbers. So you're telling this person this is a very serious thing. And she's just like, well, we're looking at different numbers then, aren't we? It's like, yeah, the people who are giving you your numbers are wrong.
Right. And I also know, working for a medical laboratory and working for a hospital, I know how little testing they're doing.
Yeah, and her argument was that the hospital isn't overrun with patients.
Right.
The hospital's empty.
That's true.
That's
not relevant.
That's not the point.
Yeah, it's
we're not New York City right now.
New York City, Detroit, Atlanta.
We will be, especially if these protests keep happening. And
Haley, Idaho.
Yeah. It won't take much. What is scary is that even if we could help and do an influx of people in the hospital, the coroner cannot. Mm-hmm. This is something that you were looking at earlier. Is we have no way to handle dead bodies here.
Yeah. The county coroner for Ada County covers 30 different jurisdictions, not just Ada County, and routinely operates at 90% of capacity.
Which on a normal, day-to-day thing, that's very efficient.
The hospital morgue across the hall from where my office is has 4 bays.
Those are the big slide out.
They can store 4 bodies.
Yeah, that's
in a level 2 trauma center.
That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. How does that even? What do they do with these bodies?
Ship them off to the coroner.
Yeah. Okay.
Every so often, when I'm going in and out, I see the coroner van there picking up bodies. It's a little disturbing to see. Fortunately, they have their own special parking pad and door with direct access so that they don't have to just take them out through the lab corridor.
Well, that's good. Just have them piling up in the hallway. Okay,
so the CDC has actually started reporting numbers. Okay, on the website, it says, this page is updated daily. Numbers reported on Saturdays and Sundays are preliminary and not yet confirmed. Blah, blah, blah. CDC does not know the exact number of COVID-19 illnesses, hospitalizations, and deaths for a variety of reasons. COVID-19 can cause mild illness. Symptoms might not appear immediately. There are delays in reporting and testing. Not everyone who is infected gets tested or seeks medical care, and there may be differences in how states and territories confirm numbers in their jurisdictions. They also say on their website, they aren't tracking the numbers, they're getting reported by states and territories.
Yeah.
Even if you just look at the local counts, the local media has higher numbers than the state CDC because the Idaho State CDC reports numbers at 5 p.m. based on what's been reported to them from the district health departments by 5 p.m. The district health departments report it on their own websites before they submit the report to the state. So what the state's effectively reporting is yesterday's numbers at 5 p.m. today. The CDC is getting that a full another day later.
Yeah. Or several days in some cases.
Or several, yeah.
Yeah. But it's so funny that the people who are most, it's like, well, your numbers are wrong, that attitude, are watching the one station whose numbers you cannot trust.
Right. That makes stuff up.
Yeah. It's like, oh, well, I'm just looking at different numbers. It's like, yeah, you are. You're looking at the wrong ones. Because there are no right ones.
Right.
But there are closer.
And this is one of the things that's really frustrating for me to watch is like, I look at the Idaho map the most, not the specifically, I don't look at the national numbers as much. Idaho had a really big bump where for a 4-day time span, they had higher number of reported confirmed cases than they've had at any other point. That's when the testing labs were getting caught up.
Yeah.
So you can look at it as, oh, everything leveled off right there. No, there was that big spike because the testing laboratories were all reporting out 2 or 3 days worth of results at the same time. These are all being counted as the date they're reported.
Not the date that they were taken, which is how it should be reported.
Yeah.
Because otherwise these numbers are meaningless.
Yep.
And they want to keep it that way because a confused populace is a non-acting populace. So actually the people protesting actually have a point, but they're missing it.
It's the wrong point.
It's very much the wrong point. It's not that the government shut down because of, some evil governor conspiracy theory. It's because they're not handling this like they should.
It's because they're
aren't
not
being
capable. They aren't capable of handling this correctly.
Yeah. The transparency is 0.
Because, okay, for one, if the state was reporting out numbers based on the date of collection, the numbers would be jumping up and down, well, mostly jumping up all the time on past days.
Yes.
And inconsistently as different labs are reporting out at different times.
Yes.
Where the state lab is a day or two and some commercial labs are 3 or 4 days. And not too long ago, commercial labs were 10-day turnaround. And then you've got local rapid testing in hospitals that's 2 hours.
But eventually it would become more clear as time goes on when these spikes were actually happening versus these reported numbers that are happening on whenever the lab
reports
around to it
back, and then that number gets sent.
We're never going to know
state.
If Easter Sunday caused a big influx of people.
No.
Because as a government trying to tell people what to do and why, they've got nothing because they're like, you shouldn't be doing this because of this. It's like, well, show us the numbers. It's like, we can't. Right. Oh, well, then we're not going to listen to you.
And we also know that it takes about 14 to 21 days for somebody to go from exposure to being symptomatic. Even then, they're probably not likely to qualify to get tested. So if they do happen to qualify to be tested, then you're usually 3 weeks out from the infection date. And when it was 10-day turnaround, you're not even looking 2 weeks back. At that point, you were looking at numbers that were really a month old.
Yeah. And that, unfortunately, that was the best that we had at the time, and they got better quickly. But,
yeah.
Oh, one of the things that really pissed me off about this park protest, though, is because it was being run by women and their children. The one woman who was detained, she couldn't be arrested. She was detained. And so all the moms started freaking out because you can't separate her from her kids. They were using their kids as shields.
Mm-hmm.
And where have we seen that before? Malheur, maybe?
Yeah.
Using women and children as shields is a very common tactic with these extreme right-wing.
Ruby Ridge, Waco.
It's just such a dick thing to do.
What's crazy is you can look at a lot of the modern right wing, especially as it keeps getting more and more extreme, and you can trace a lot of it back to those extremists of Waco and Ruby Ridge.
Well, that's because deep down, women and children are just property anyway. They're expendable.
Now, in the case of Waco, they were all David Koresh's property.
Right.
Yeah. So the director of the CDC is warning that a second wave could be worse because it will coincide with flu season when hospitals are already usually at their max.
Not to mention all those people that have been avoiding the hospitals, and so their medical problems have been increasing.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to have to go to the hospitals here pretty soon for diabetes or heart disease or
one number
infections.
One number that some doctors are curious about is how many people are dying because they didn't get care.
Yeah, because they were too afraid of going to the hospital. Yeah.
While the governor of Georgia is preparing to reopen the state, as is the governor of Florida.
From what I hear, they're not doing a good job of keeping people inside anyway. Apparently, every day the Florida beaches are just still like tons of people.
South Carolina as well. South Carolina's plan is to let stores open at 20% capacity, or 5 people per 1,000 square feet. Tennessee is going to allow the vast majority of businesses to reopen on May 1, some sooner. Alaska is going to start relaxing some of the rules, allowing restaurants and hair salons to reopen.
What's with the hair salons? Really? That seems to be the one that people really got sucked into. Dude, you're at home. You don't need a haircut.
In Georgia, Governor Kemp is saying that his state's on track with the federal government's guidance of having a 14-day continuous decline in coronavirus cases before reopening. That's despite more than 5,700 new cases last week in his state alone.
So he's lying.
Well, when you don't do much testing, it's easy to tweak the pressure on what testing is allowed and massage those numbers.
Yeah, but that's straight up just lying.
5,700 could be less. But it's Georgia, and most of the people who are dying are black.
Right. So who cares?
It's black people in Atlanta that are dying.
Ugh.
Florida has already reopened some beaches. Jacksonville specifically reopened. Miami is still keeping theirs closed, with the mayor of Miami-Dade County saying that they will be reopening when medical experts say that it's time.
Okay.
Yeah. We do need to reopen at some point. We can't maintain the present course forever.
No. But do it smartly.
But we need to do it the right way.
And kind of slowly.
Yeah.
With more essential opening up first. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's been shown over and over again is that it's the states, countries, territories that completely lock down that survive the best.
Yep. And the ones who lock down before it's bad.
Yeah.
If you wait till it's already bad, it's too late.
Seattle missed their port closing by weeks, months.
But still, Seattle still managed to keep it from getting to what New York got.
Yeah.
Because by the time New York shut it down, and again, when you're 14 to 21 days behind on every action you take, it was too late.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see Idaho's numbers here in the next couple of weeks as Ammon Bundy and these other protests start to trickle in. So people think that, one, that they're either immune or two, that it's not going to be that bad when they get it. Do you remember the last time you actually had influenza? Because most people have not had flu.
I do.
And it sucks. And you do not want to go through that. And you do not want to go through a version of that that's worse.
I was 14. I missed a week of school. I could not eat for 48 hours. I couldn't even keep down liquids for the first 24. My mom nearly took me to the ER, but got some Gatorade, and I managed to keep that down. And if I'd thrown that up, she would have taken me to the ER because I was on the verge of pretty severe dehydration already at that point. It was bad.
Yeah. It's not that lay down in your bed for a couple of days. And
No.
Yeah.
And this is worse.
Yeah. Not to mention that if you do get the flu and you got the vaccine, you're likely to not have as bad of a flu as if you hadn't been vaccinated. Totally different argument there, but anyway.
I've also had pneumonia before.
Yeah. And you've had pneumonia a couple times.
Yeah, not fun.
Not really.
Really not fun.
No.
So a federal court has ordered the Genesis 2 Church of Health and Healing to stop distributing their COVID-19 cure.
Well, let me guess. Some mixture of bleach and herbs.
Well, it's either called Master Mineral Solution or Miracle Mineral Solution.
Minerals.
Plus an activator that turns it into industrial grade bleach.
God, people.
They call it a sacrament. They claim that it heals Alzheimer's, autism, brain cancer, HIV and AIDS, and multiple sclerosis.
Well, everybody knows that death is the cure, so... Yeah.
Well, they don't do enough to kill you. They just do enough to kill your gut and cause you to shit out your intestinal linings, which allows them to say, oh, those are the worms that were causing whatever your problem is.
Yeah, this is a big problem in the UK. Kids with autism.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
They're still around.
I can't imagine doing that to your kid. Oh my gosh. I just can't.
This is, oh man. Yeah, the FDA is going after them. They have sought a permanent injunction and refunds for everybody who's bought MMS. At present, they have a temporary injunction. Odds of this moving to permanent is pretty high. Now, to get the FDA to actually be taking legal action against a company is pretty bad.
Yeah.
And for them to be taking legal action against something identifying as a church...
tax-free.
...is an even higher bar. But when you make claims that you are curing something, that is a very specific medical claim that requires evaluation by the Food and Drug Administration under U.S. law.
Yeah. They'll get you on the fine print if they can't get you on for the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
It's bad enough that you're a church claiming selling poison to people and claiming it's a cure. No, let's get down to the law that you're actually breaking. Yeah, it's claiming medical, any kind of medical cure, or what do you call it? Brain fart. But
snake oil.
You can't claim that something does something it doesn't.
Right.
And
there are words that are allowed to be used, like helps with, promotes, relieves. Those are not tightly regulated terms. Diagnose, treat, and cure are. And once you use those words, it requires a prescription.
Yeah.
And FDA approval, or at least an emergency use authorization or compassionate use authorization, which this does not qualify for either.
No, this is just some people trying to get rich. What's worse, war profiteering or pandemic profiteering? It doesn't matter. It's still bad. It's still icky.
Yeah. And the Archdiocese, no, not Archdiocese, the Diocese of Boise for the Roman Catholic Church is working on allowing people to come back to church, but not for services. Right now, Catholic churches are just straight up closed.
Okay.
So they are working on the plan to allow people who feel like they need to come in for confession to maintain social distancing and go to the confessional.
It's confession. That should be pretty damn easy.
And to allow people to privately and alone or in small family groups enter the sanctuary for prayer and then have somebody follow up and clean it.
Yeah, that would be easy.
Yep.
And yeah, if they have a good plan put in place and they actually follow through with the cleanings, I don't see any problem with that.
Well, it's like hospitals now are working on reopening, and doctors' offices too. They're working on reopening services. That initial halt of non-essential services was because of the risk of those services spreading the virus.
Right.
And they're allowing to reopen in a way that allows for not spreading the virus.
Yeah, not piling up patients in waiting rooms.
Yeah.
For example.
Like, I went to the doctor.
Which I think should be illegal anyway.
I went to the
doctor
doctor
And there should
today.
definitely not be a second waiting room. That's just torture. Anyway.
I had to go through 2 waiting rooms.
You almost always do.
But yeah, I went to the doctor today, and everybody was wearing a mask, myself included. The first waiting room, there was nobody else in the waiting room. The second waiting room, there was one other person in the waiting room part of the time. And I had probably 2 minutes of contact with the nurse. We were both wearing masks. And the doctor was probably 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I was actually in the office was because the doctor actually needed to do physical examination. The follow-up will be via telehealth.
Yeah.
Because to find out if the pain's gone away...
That's just a phone call.
Yeah. Yeah. So, things are starting to open up. And they need to the right way. They need to slowly and carefully and with cleaning and distance and not a returning to the old normal.
Yeah.
We are going to have to find a new normal to help us survive and maintain sanity until we get a vaccine for this. Or we'll be able to get back to a new normal a lot sooner, but there'll be a lot fewer people returning to that normal.
Yeah. I want to push the button.
You want to?
I want to push the button. So good. So good pushing the button.
So yeah, I upgraded the setup. Got a Zoom L8.
Should post a picture to the website.
I should. And we are sitting both on the couches.
Comfy.
My desk has not only been removed, but I have disassembled it.
Has been replaced by Lauren's Craft Center.
Yeah, that's not quite what we thought it was going to end up being, but that is what it became.
No, I needed some kind of flat surface, so I can't even use the workbench. I mean, come on, you got to give me something.
So, it's mixer sitting on a end table with multi-track recording built into it, and this should make everything a lot easier for me. Since the old setup was, every time I did an interview, it seemed like something went wrong.
Yeah, that gets old fast.
Yeah.
Remember when we were first dating, how every time we sat down to watch a movie, something crashed? And I thought, I was like, this is it. This is my life with this guy. He's going to have to finagle things and fix things constantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I ended up marrying you anyway. It worked out.
And we don't have that issue with stuff much.
It's a personality flaw, sweetie.
Oh.
I'm sorry, but I've come to terms with it. I don't know why you haven't, but as soon as things get good, you want to change it.
True. On the website from Rich, we got D and L. It took me a sec to realize this was in regards to episode 350. It took me a sec to realize what take a bite of you meant. I'm getting a tad slow on the uptake in my old age. My last bite was quite a while ago. Tasty as I recall. Love you both. Keep on keeping on, Rich. And I'm pretty sure that was about Kylie, but then again, she's at that bitey age, so it could easily be. I'm not completely sure. Anyway, that's it for this week. Lauren, thank you.
Thank you for the milkshake.
And listeners, remember, not all those who wander.
Let me push it.
Are lost. Thank you for listening to another episode of Atheist Nomads. You can find show notes and contact information at atheistnomads.com. Follow us on Twitter at Atheist Nomads, and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Atheist Nomads. Please subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcatcher of choice, and while you're there, feel free to leave us a review. Theme music is courtesy of Sturdy Fred. Until next time, this has been the Atheist Nomads.